Today, we're going to take a deep dive into heating this bus using the pellet stove and trying to figure out why I've been having so much trouble keeping it warm in here. That thing puts out an insane amount of heat, and at times, with certain settings, it struggles to keep it at 60 in here. So we're going to look through a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to go through the thought process, do some investigating, and try to figure out what's going on under the floor in this thing, and see if we can see why heat seems to be escaping. So welcome to a semi-technical video, and let's go along for the ride and see what I can figure out. I've obviously already figured it out. I'm filming this after the fact, but anyways, enjoy. Okay, it's approximately 8 p.m. Christmas night, and we're supposed to have some like winter storm or something. Let me grab my phone. It's just barely snowing outside. Tonight it's only getting down to 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Later on this week though, it's getting down to like 14 or something. I've just got another bag of pellets here, so we're gonna dump that in real quick. Got the circulation fan going and the stove's making noise, so yeah. So let's dump this bag of pellets in. I think it'll fit in here. I put my elbows on my knees, grab the bag, and then I can just pivot up like this. There we go. I typically run this stove on low because I can get, we'll say 2.5 days on a bag of pellets. But with it this cold outside, you gotta run it on medium. And, oh, that bag is the one with the rip in it. I was wondering where that went. And when it's running on medium, I'm lucky to get an entire day out of a bag. Luckily, I don't like it to be very warm when I sleep. My target maximum temperature is probably 63 degrees. And of course I got a whole bunch of blankets, so what I've been doing is running this thing on medium while I'm just winding down for the day, and then when I go to bed I put it back on low. Yeah, it's pretty full. I did notice, however, that in this bus, with the way the heating system works, there's these big channels that go down the middle where the main frame rails are in this thing. They're probably about this wide. Actually, I've got a picture of it from another bus that someone tore apart. But those great big long 30-foot channels hooked to the heating system in the back, and there's air intakes in the front. The air intakes used to be on the ramp that was going up in here, but we covered all that with plywood. So there's one intake hole in the front. I can't show you right now because it's dark. Actually, maybe I can. Previously there was a ramp right here and a step down over there, and there's still a step down there. So we covered this whole thing with plywood and basically sealed it off. And the air intakes were vertical right here and right here. So that actually worked out pretty well because I found out all of the heat was drafting out of this bus in a hurry through that tunnel. But I was able to make this little plywood panel right here to put over that hole that goes into the intakes and keep all the heat from drafting out of here. I just needed to make sure this was actually completely sealed here. There we go. I should probably put a latch or screws or something on that. Now for now, we'll just stick the Instapot up against it. There we go, that'll work. I was looking around in here with a thermal camera last week, looking for cold spots, and up there it was really cold. And I stuck my hand down there and noticed there was a crazy draft. It's supposed to snow tonight. I got a time-lapse camera set up. I don't think we're actually gonna get any meaningful amount of snow, but whatever. Time to watch some YouTube and eventually go to sleep. See ya! It would appear as though there's snow, and the flakes are, I don't know, moderate size. As you can tell, it's not very deep. Those are rubber mats out there on the ground, and they're still clearly visible. Yeah, look at that. We got flakes falling from the sky. So I stuck this camera in the van last night for a time lapse, and look, I don't know if it's making enough heat or what, but everything's covered in snow except for where the camera is. Well, as you can see, it's a little bit wintry out here. Insulation's been actually doing really good in the bus. Everything's kind of started melting now. I filmed the clip, I think it was 2 days ago, but it was kind of windy and you couldn't hear what I was saying. But essentially I was looking up top here, and you could see that there was snow on top, which is a good indicator for the insulation working like it's supposed to. It's been really weird though. It's below freezing, but snow is melting. I think the ground has not been cold long enough for everything to stick. It's like the snow has a higher melting point than everything else out here. As you can see, that slid off onto the ground. Anyways, not quite sure what the plan is today. We'll figure out something to do though. So the snow is kind of turned into slush, which is interesting. It almost kind of cleans your wheels as you drive. I don't know if that makes this better or worse. Whatever. I'll just leave it. So I wound up adjusting the feed rate on the stove a little bit. I'm able to leave it on low now, and it keeps it somewhere between 58 and 61 degrees in here, and I'm just leaving it running all the time. I think before what was going on was the feed rate was low enough, and when the stove was off during the day, it couldn't overcome the amount of cold that was in here in a reasonable amount of time. So anyways, I think we got it settled now. I'm going through about one bag every 24 hours roughly, which isn't too bad. It's supposed to get down to like 17 tonight, but then they keep changing it. It's going between 17 and 21, so we'll see what actually happens. And then after that, it's going to be a balmy 47 degrees on, I think, Wednesday. And then I think most of this stuff's going to go away. Well, it's yet another beautiful morning. It's approximately 30 degrees outside right now. Let's look at the graph and see what the temperature inside here was. So I'm running Home Assistant here, and it's running on a Raspberry Pi 4. So we can data log all kinds of stuff and control various things in here. If you look at this graph right here, this top blue line is up front where we're sitting, and the purple line is all the way in the back. When I went to bed, I had the stove on medium, and that's what this spike is right here. So it was about 63.7 degrees when I went to bed, put the stove on low, and it slowly sank down. 4 a.m. it was 57 in here, and about 8:39 a.m. when it was the coldest outside, it was 54.7 in here. Now, that does seem cold, but I sleep with a lot of blankets, and if it's more than about 63 degrees in the room I'm sleeping in, I get way too warm. So that works great for me. The coldest point last night was 28.8 degrees. I think you can see that there on top where this blue part is. So let's check in with the stove and see how many pellets we have left. I filled this thing up yesterday. Actually, what time is it? 11:30? Yeah, it was probably about 24 hours ago. I just shut this thing off a few minutes ago. And yeah, I mean, definitely time for a fill, but this thing would run for probably 3 more hours on low with the amount of pellets that are in here. So that's not doing too bad. Well, this thing was on all day yesterday. It was on low most of the day. Probably on medium for about 4 hours total. And you might be thinking, why don't you just leave the thing on medium and make it nice and warm in here? Well, I don't know. I guess in my mind subconsciously I'm trying to save pellets, and I feel like if I'm using more than one bag per 24 hours, that's too many. I don't know, whatever. I guess the thought is I'm testing it to see the fewest amount that I can use. Obviously I'm parked somewhere right now, so I can just, you know, go down to the hardware store or the feed store and get more pellets. But if I'm out running around somewhere, I'm trying to figure out what the bare minimum amount I can use is without freezing to death. So just kind of testing, I suppose. Alright, just got the stove refilled here, cleaned out the fire pot on it, and I think what I'm going to do is go inside and look through the service manual on this thing again. I was noticing the other night that there's a few other spots we might be losing heat. See where this blue piece of painter's tape is? This whole channel right here is part of the heat and air conditioning ducting, and there's a bunch of holes that go through here into that. What I'm going to do is figure out where these channels actually interface with the heating system. I know it's somewhere here in the back, But these channels here are also open to the window area here. Behind each of these panels is a passage that goes down here. I don't know if we're losing heat or if this thing... Well, basically, I need to look up the heating system, see how it exactly works, and figure out if there's some little doors we can close or something to keep heat from drafting out of here. We're doing pretty good right now with the stove on low, but I feel like we should be able to heat it to 70 degrees in here, no questions asked, on the minimum setting on this stove. So I think we're still losing heat somewhere. I'm gonna go make some breakfast, look through this, see what I can figure out. Oh, plus it's nice and sunny today. Check this out. Ta-da! Sunlight. And that's the other thing too I found. Even when it's super cold outside, any sunlight we can get in here heats this thing up really well. Okay, I had my lunch and we've learned a few interesting things here from the service manual. It's always interesting when I look up systems in this thing and nothing is the way I think it should be. Well, it's designed really well, but it's different than how you would assume. Okay, starting with these side panels here. That would be these little tunnels that go along the side of the bus. These have air going through them that comes up through these slots here, and then there's some other little holes down on the bottom that I assumed were all the same thing. As it turns out, these little side channels have two chambers. There is the heat and AC that forces up through the windowsills right here. This is a cross section of the side of the bus. But down in the lower section is actually part of the cold air return. There's a divider in the middle. I did not know that. All of the cold air returns connect to an equipment mezzanine that's inside one of the luggage bays. Here we go. So in the middle of the bus, kind of by where the fuel tank and power distribution areas are, inside the rear luggage rack, there's another hatch that opens up and goes into a little equipment bay. That entire little, like, room, as it were, is completely sealed and the air intakes are in there. The cold air returns basically feed this entire space, and then there's some blowers that force the air through the heating and AC condenser and back into the inside of the bus. So what that means, basically, is we're not pulling air outside the vehicle at all. It's all contained within the vehicle. Some of it is down in that equipment area, but that equipment area is not insulated like the inside of the bus is. So with these great big long runners that run through the frame channels underneath the floor, there's enough heat differential that we're getting some pretty serious drafting. And because those things are at least 30 feet long, you get quite a bit of velocity. So it starts pulling air down through there. In theory, it's going to cycle back up through here, but all of the steel and aluminum and other components that are down there are soaking up that heat. So what I've determined is our cold air returns that are underneath this piece of plywood, it's good to have that front part sealed up. That keeps everything from drafting at high speed and trying to heat up components down there that are connected to the coolant lines and a bunch of other aluminum and other things that are going to radiate heat away. As far as these little side panels go, you can see there's some little vents here, but these are on the upper portion. So in a few places where the seats used to be, we've got these adjustable sliders. So I'm going to go around and close all of these. You can see there's a little screw there, and this panel slides back and forth. So when the heat's on, it would be forcing air out through here. Let's go look at the ones in the back. So if we come along here, we can see another set of those vents that's already closed. But when we continue back further, we have another set of holes that you can't close, and these are on the bottom half. Somewhere here in the middle there's a divider. This is our heat coming into the vehicle, heat or AC, and this is the cold air return going down to the HVAC. So that tells me I should keep these taped off for now, so we're not drafting air down there. These things by the windows are fine. They basically go down to that little lower equipment area, but since it's sealed off and heat rises, we're not necessarily going to be getting air drafting down through here and removing heat, especially since our cold air returns are blocked off. Now there's kind of a pile of garbage back here. This is the old bathroom wall, which is going to be repurposed into the wall that's going to go behind the shower here. But behind this, there's more of these intake holes, and we need to seal all those off. So what I need to do is move all this stuff. Oh yeah, I can feel cold air down here. As soon as I move that, But all along the bottom here, there's some more of those cold air returns. And there's two more things I need to check. In the front by the driver's area, there's an outside air mixing valve that has sort of a ram air intake that's behind the front bumper where the spare tire is stored. And there's a couple of cable valves next to the driver's seat, so I need to check on those. And then also there's supposedly a vent in the passenger entry door as well. I haven't seen that, but I also haven't looked for it, so let's look at both of those. Now I'm in the driver's seat, and over here on this side, there are some cable-actuated valves. I have seen them before, but I wasn't quite sure what they did. So if we look down here, we've got two mechanical plungers. This one's supposed to be pulled up for everything to be locked. I think these are quarter turn to unlock. Okay, so that one is up all the way. And this one's also supposed to be up. Oh yeah, so that would close the heating valve. This is just the coolant one, and that opens it. This rear one here, which is kind of frozen up. It looks like it's pulled up. It's not as high as this one, so we might still be getting... Oh, there we go, there it moved. So that's open. And that's closed. Okay, cool. So that makes sure our cold air intake on the front bumper is closed. All right, excellent. Down here in the stairwell, there's supposedly... Oh. Yeah. Okay, so I need to tape all this off, too. This connects into the same cold air return. Actually, maybe I can show you down here. Yeah, see all those grills down there in the ramp area? So those connect in with this. So I think what I need to do is open this front door, and then I can hop onto the steps. And I'm going to put a bunch of that blue painter's tape over this as well. I can't see a ventilation hole in the door, but let's go outside and take a look. Gonna get some sunlight out here today. Let's get this door opened up. Now the service manual did mention that there was a vent in this door to get rid of excess pressure or equalize the pressure, but it was also an option. So it looks like in this one, this panel here is keeping any of that from happening. I don't feel any openings anywhere. Don't eat the yellow snow. And I don't see any openings out here at all. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and assume that this particular bus does not have the door vent. So here's that cold air grill that we're gonna need to cover up. Let's look inside the door latch area here and see what's going on. So yeah, there's quite a bit of space in there. And then yeah, it goes back and connects to the bottom of those channels that run along the floor of the bus. Yeah, I can actually feel a tiny bit of airflow going through here. Looks like we got a bunch of garbage in there, like chewing gum and pencils and stuff. Well, let's go ahead and get this taped off for now. The idea is we're just trying to keep the system from drafting and circulating air by closing off all of the cold air returns. The output from the heating system, like I was saying before, as long as it can't go in circles, I think we should be good. I was noticing though with a thermal camera, even after I put this in here, this whole area was still pretty cold. Now there may not be as much insulation in the floor and the step well here, but that being directly connected to this kind of makes sense. Actually, it looks like we're missing a screw here. Yeah, all these screws are a little bit loose. I wonder what someone was doing in there. Huh, interesting. Actually, I just realized behind this panel right here is part of the auxiliary heating system. So we might try and pull this panel out and see if we have any external vents. I had this out once before. I'm trying to remember how it works. There we go. Oh boy. Could probably get the shop vac in here. Oh, here's one of our temperature sensors. Oh, this is an antenna. What the heck? There's a random antenna right here. I wonder if that's for the TV system. Oh yeah, it goes up here and connects to the back. It goes up here and connects to the back of the radio. I think that was the TV antenna. That's a weird spot for that. And here's the air solenoid for our automatic door opening system. We've got some of our... Okay, so there's an AC condenser right there. It doesn't look like anything connects to the outside in here. Oh, okay, so these are the blower motors for the defroster. Oh, and here's our relays. And, oh, I didn't know this was a Thermo King system. Passenger side blower, driver side blower. And we got a couple of 15-amp breakers and some relays here. Cool. Well, at some point I'm going to have to get the shop vac in here and clean all this up. Oh, do these just come right out? There's little latches here so you can pull the blower motors out and service them. That's pretty cool. Oh, our heater core is back up in here. All right. Interesting. Well, let's put all this back together. There we go. That actually wasn't installed correctly before. All right, cool. Let's go into the back and move a few things, and we're going to tape off some more of those cold air returns. Actually, I probably won't film that because whatever. I'll be back in a few minutes. Got everything moved here. We've got this all taped off now. I'm going to go around and make sure all of these little heat output vents are actually closed as well. Yeah, see how those open and close? These ones aren't as critical, but I'm just trying to make sure that nothing is drafting in here anywhere. And obviously this tape isn't super, doesn't have super insulation properties, but as long as air is not whizzing around in here, that's all I really care about. And I think all these were really for was so that people could get some heat on their feet when they're sitting in the seats. But even with all those closed, we'll still get plenty of flow if we do turn on the heating system up through these windows. Obviously, I have to remove all the tape and everything from the cold air returns if we want to use the heating system that's built into this vehicle, but yeah, whatever. Okay, I think at this point, I wound up moving the shower out of the way, but I think at this point, I've got all the cold air returns blocked off and all of the lower heat intakes blocked off as well. And like I was saying earlier, I don't think we're going to have an issue with heat going down through here, just because heat tends to rise. And even if it does go down through there, that pocket of air is roughly trapped, since it can't circulate back through the entire system, and certainly can't build up all that velocity going through these channels into the floor. Look at the service manual all tidied back up here. Man, I wish I still had a bindery machine. Years ago when I was doing printing stuff, I had the equipment to make something like this into a book with the big plastic spiral bound things or whatever. I haven't been able to find the exact manual for this thing on eBay or anywhere. This one's actually for a model that's 2 years newer. There's only a couple of minor differences, but for the most part, this seems to get the job done. This is, I think it was about 570 sheets of paper, but I printed it all double-sided with 4 pages per sheet, and it's still this thick. Super handy though. I don't think I've encountered a service manual that has more detailed information than this thing does. The location of every single rivet in this chassis is in this book. They have a grid labeling everything. It's absolutely insane. I think I'm going to fire up the pellet stove, let the heat kind of start saturating in here, work on editing this, and then get out the thermal camera once it gets warmed up in here and see where our heat... Wait a minute. I wonder if there's a fog machine around here. A fog machine would actually be really cool. Then we could see exactly where all the airflow is going. I'm going to see if I can get my hands on one of those. Okay, we got the pellet stove fired up now. It's been probably an hour since the last clip. We're up to about 60 degrees in here. So let's boot up the thermal imaging phone here and do some looking around. Unfortunately, I was not able to find a fog machine. I am going to get one though, and in a future video we'll play around with that. But for right now, it's still below freezing and the roads are somewhat questionable, so we won't be doing that in this video. By the way, this is a CAT S60 FLIR thermal imaging phone. I got this on Amazon probably 8 months ago for 260 bucks. It's a new old stock from 2017. It's an old Android phone. I think it's running Android 7, so it doesn't currently support security updates. But for the price, it's an actual FLIR Lepton camera, and you can record video and do all kinds of stuff with this. An equivalent FLIR handheld would probably be closer to 700 bucks. I think the resolution might be a little bigger on the handheld ones, but anyways, it's really cool. I'm gonna fire up the video camera and we're gonna look around in here. Fair warning, this camera is very low resolution with a very low frame rate. It doesn't really flicker, but if you are photosensitive, this next clip is probably about 3 minutes long, so just fair warning, there's time codes down below if you want to skip past it. Here we have video through the thermal imaging camera. You can see the computer there and the monitors are warm, and my iced coffee is cold. You can kind of ignore the temperature crosshairs there in the middle. But we've had the stove running here on medium for probably an hour or so now, and it's about 65 degrees in here. The way this camera works, the video will kind of freeze occasionally because it has to recalibrate. But you can see our glass here is over 300 degrees, and the air coming out into the room is maybe 240, somewhere around there. If we look around a little bit, you can see the ceiling, and obviously the surface here right in front of the pellet stove is nice and hot because it's blowing air directly onto it. But up here on the ceiling, everything looks pretty even. If we look in the back area here, we can see the bed and anything made of cloth is fairly warm. Anything up near the ceiling is fairly warm. The heat circulation fan is doing its job pretty well. My temperature sensor for the inside is actually right here, and that wound up to be kind of the perfect spot to get an average temperature. Back here though, we can see where there's stainless on the floor and other metal parts. The heat kind of radiates out a little bit just because it's thermally coupled to the frame because it's metal. Over here on the side, that stainless shows kind of hot because it's reflecting heat from up above. Curtains back here are about 50 degrees. Cardboard box on the floor back here, about 50 degrees. We can see near the edges where all the metal and stuff bolts together is going to be cold, which makes sense. Thermal imaging can be a little bit tricky to interpret. When we have something like that stove in the field of view, it makes everything else look colder. The colors are basically representing a temperature differential. If you notice, the stove, when it's not in frame, everything else appears to get lighter in color. The lighter the color, the warmer it is. If you look up front here, in the stairwell, it's obviously a little bit colder. But between this plywood floor and that step is maybe only about 5 degrees difference, which isn't bad. Down here in the stairs, actually it's fairly even now. That very bottom part down there is cold because that's sheet metal, and that's directly attached to the outside of the vehicle. It's a little bit cooler down there by our plywood cap on the cold air return. But near as I can tell, I think things are sealed fairly well in here. Unfortunately, you can't see air temperature with a thermal camera. You can only see non-reflective surfaces. But yeah, I'm fairly pleased, I think, at this point. I don't have video from earlier because I didn't record it to show what it looked like before I had this all sealed up. But yeah, I think we're doing good. I can tell already that things are a little more sealed up in here and heating a little bit better. When I first fired this up earlier, I had it off for a number of hours when I was filming earlier, and I was also cleaning out the fire pot and stuff. But it was about 40 degrees when I turned it on less than an hour ago, and now we're at 65. Even on medium setting, which it's on right now, it wasn't able to warm it up that quick in here. So I think we actually made some progress here. By the way, I do have backup heating if I need it. There is an electric heater I can run in here. I've also got one of those Mr. Heater dual propane tank heater systems. Obviously you got to be careful with carbon monoxide with those, but for right now I do have backup options in case this thing quits working for whatever reason. Oh, and I also have that that roll-around portable heat pump. I almost forgot about that. It's over in the white van right now. I think we're going to call that good for today. We got a few of the cold air returns blocked off and have a better understanding of how the heating and air conditioning system works in this thing. Overnight tonight will be a good test to see if the stove keeps it warmer in here than it did before. I am going to find a fog machine and we are going to play around with that at some point in the future. But for now, I think that's all we can do today. So I will catch you in a couple of days. Insert YouTube closing stuff. See ya.